I know how to type words into Wikipedia. Because of this highly specialized and unique skill I have, you could say I'm something of an expert on video game history. Being the expert that I am, I do not need to watch the infinite void of unwatched bug retrospectives on this horribly mismanaged, dying platform to tell you that almost all of them probably mention the famed filmmaker Steven Spielberg's relation to Sega's could have been major mascot vehicle. Or I could be wrong. In addition to being a gaming historian, I am also legally retarded. Spielberg praised Bug after witnessing it at the 1995 Consumer Electronics Show. Here's what he said, quote, this is the character that's going to do it for Saturn, unquote. The only source for this declaration is an IGN article, but there's another story out there which says that Sonic Team invited Spielberg to play Nights into Dreams before its release. This made him the first person outside of its development staff to play the game. I didn't know Spielberg liked video games, and while there's a lack of widespread documentation of these events, all the evidence seems to confirm that he has a sincere enthusiasm for the medium. So given that Spielberg knows a thing or two about video games, why did he sing the praises of Bug of all games? This era of video games had no shortage of failed mascots with irritating personality traits. Jazz Jackrabbit and Bubsy come to mind. Bug is also a smart-ass know-it-all who would get punched in the face in real life. Something like Bubsy might have been inspired by Sonic the Hedgehog's character. Given that it was made by Sega, Bug's likelihood of drawing from the same inspiration is even higher. The Sega Saturn had no standalone Sonic the Hedgehog game, so they needed a new mascot, a smug and smarmy one. One that reminds me of those kids that do stupid dance moves. Kids that don't have a dad in their lives to tell them to stop doing that crap, because they mama is an independent woman whose finances depend on a do-nothing office job, and she don't need no man in her life. Her 8-year-old has an Instagram account. I wander graveyards looking for the date of births from 2005 onward. Where's your child's grave? I'm gonna dab on it. I don't know why everyone projected Sonic to be some insufferable wise-ass. He didn't even talk in the first few games. He just tapped his toes and gave you a dirty look if you left him standing there for too long. That was the extent of his bad attitude. You could argue that the cartoon had something to do with this perception, but that Sonic always seemed like a decent kind of guy who would not disgrace a child's resting place.
Kids, there's nothing more cool than being hugged by someone you like. But if someone tries to touch you in a place or in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, that's no good. It's your body. No one has the right to touch you if you don't want them to. So what do? First, you say no. Then, you get out of there. Most important, you gotta tell someone you trust. Like your parents, your teacher, a police officer.
Oh no, I was wrong and I take it all back. It's like Sonic wants your kid to get molested. But if you're the average modern mother, you probably want that to happen. Bug's progenitors tried to get a TV show made about him, but it's good that it never happened. Bug would have had some kind of segment where he tells kids that the best way to avoid getting molested is to work in Hollywood. And then Sonic comes and argues that going to school is safer. It would have been a disaster. Anyway, Steven Spielberg is a smart guy. He knows what mass audiences like, and he saw that young people were cocky and smarmy, like Bug. Combined with his simple and immediately recognizable design, I could see why Spielberg saw potential in the character. Bug was popular enough to yield a sequel, it just didn't have the momentum to go further than that. Maybe you could blame the console that hosted the character, maybe he was not overly representative of a new generation of video game consumers. The point is that Bug ultimately proved Spielberg wrong. Bug was not a console-defining character, and there are a number of possible reasons for that. Bug is considered to be one of the first 3D platformers. Its levels are definitely rendered in 3 dimensions, and many level obstacles put this on display. Bug himself and his enemies shift between 2-dimensional planes, so it's not really a true 3D platformer. I think this technique of creating a gray area between 2 and 3 dimensions was relatively new at the time. I could be wrong, but this might be the reason for its lack of polish in its execution. Moving from vertical to horizontal axis can be sloppy, as you'll get Bug caught up on invisible walls whenever the level design demands a move between planes. This disrupts game flow in a game that really needs a lot of improvement in its pacing. Bug has a problem, and that problem is level design. Their construction is good, branching paths and secret areas are plentiful, but the problem is their gargantuan scale. Nothing wrong with lengthy stages at all, but a few things need to be in place for these circumstances to be enjoyable. A previous iteration of this review had a giant paragraph about how Bug has no save feature. This is what I thought for a long time. I believed that you needed a cheat code to obtain a level select feature. I got the impression that Bug's creators probably intended you to marathon this game from start to finish. Then I saw this screen, so I guess Bug might have some kind of means of saving the game's progress, but how that happens is not clear. I turned the game on another time after this and saw no saved game, which muddled this whole matter even further. It's a mess, so I'm just gonna say that there's no save feature. Just use the level select code and play pretend that you can save your game. It's the same thing. With or without a save feature, Bug's giant levels are still a strike against it. Bug is a platforming game, and I like to measure this genre's quality by how athletic their controlled characters feel. Platforming is generally best when the main character can move quickly or jump really high. My preference is that they have both abilities, but one or the other is fine by me. Bug has neither, and even though the game controls well, its titular hero does not move around too well. He is not athletic at all, and the giant levels are designed with cheap deaths in mind. There are tons of bottomless pits, many enemies that deal damage before you can figure out their attack patterns, and lots of ledges that just escape Bug's reach if you don't give it a perfect jump at the perfect velocity. Cheap damage and death in a video game can be overcome if the moments between are fun, but Bug needs to have greater running and jumping abilities for that to happen. I get that he's supposed to be a movie actor, and actors aren't typically the greatest athletes, but this is a game. Fun comes first. Context and logic within the setting is a background bonus. If you have big levels, stage designs that create a lot of frustration, and a character that's a bit of a chore to move from here to there, your game is in trouble. I think it's neat when games blur the line between 2 and 3 dimensions. I like platformers. I like Sega consoles. On paper, Bug seems like a game that I would like very much, so I kept giving it my time. Too many games from this era have that one stage that almost forces you to turn off the game for good. I kept playing, hoping that Bug would improve beyond the awful Reptilia stage that would fill the game-wrecking role. Most of the stage's problems would be non-existent if Bug didn't launch himself backward whenever he takes damage. Even worse is that he always seems to find a bottomless pit, like there's a homing device programmed to find the most infuriating outcome when you do something wrong, prompting you to turn off the console. You could call it a rage quit, but I felt too empty and tired to get angry. It's like going out in public because you haven't left the house in weeks. You've talked to not a solitary soul in that time. So you go to some fast casual food chain and you order some orange chicken or whatever, and then you see something that fills you with emptiness, like a clueless couple plopping down a tablet in front of their kid that's playing some horrible videos on YouTube while they stuff their idiot chewing holes. Raising kids is hard. They just thought sex made their peepees feels good, and then the memories revive themselves. Memories of why you stopped bothering with humanity beyond the most perfunctory of efforts. You swear to yourself that the cycle will never begin anew. But it does. It always does. I kept playing Bug even though its introduction cinematic couldn't be skipped. I kept playing despite its unlikable dork of a protagonist. I kept playing through the ridiculous camera issues. I don't understand how it's possible to botch a camera in what's basically a 2-dimensional platforming game, but a section in the Reptilia stage exemplifies this inexplicable flaw. You have to bounce Bug on bone springs across a bottomless pit. The camera does not zoom out to show you the distance between jump points. It's a giant guessing game, and missing a jump doesn't send you to an earlier point in the level, which would have made for much better stage design. A missed jump kills Bug. It's all very maddening. And then Bug shakes his green ass at you when cheap deaths finally deplete your lives and continues. I really started to dislike Bug around this moment, and I decided that nothing it could do would put it back in my good graces. What did Steven Spielberg see in this cocksucker? I'm almost convinced that he never said anything nice about Bug. I'm thinking the quote was fabricated. Maybe he saw this bonus stage with Sonic doing stuff in the background and got confused. Even if Spielberg liked Bug because it has something to do with movies, the levels don't use this theme as visual motifs. It is a wasted opportunity, but I think Bug's art direction is probably its strongest point. I like that every level has a vibrant color palette. All the hues and tones and saturations stand out from one another. It all looks very crisp and refreshing. I can go on at length about all the bad parts that Bug has, but it has something going for it. I like the animation and character models a lot, particularly the bosses. Its control controls are functional, and the levels have a good draw distance. You can see off into the distance and get an idea of all the paths available to traverse in a level. There are some creative obstacles that exploit its 2D and 3D elements. The enemies and characters look good, but that's all the positive that comes to mind. You can endlessly nitpick most games if you really want to do that. It's all made up of math and coding, so you'll find a game's limitations eventually, even if it is a marvel of programming complexity. Expansive or simplistic, it's very easy to measure a game's quality, even if you can't fully articulate why you like or dislike it. If you look forward to playing after introducing yourself to a game, it's probably good. If you dread the idea of turning on the console while a game is waiting in the disc tray, it's probably bad. This is how I felt most of the time with Bug. If Bug were a cheaper game that somehow sold a boatload of copies despite its relative lack of quality, I wouldn't be as critical of it. But this game has a moderately large price tag attached. Its current going rate does not represent its quality. Bug is a substandard game that taunts you with an inappropriate ass dance when you lose. That's no way to get a recommendation from me.